There's a nice ring, doesn't it? There's a nice ring. Hare Krishna. Of course, it's kind of Essex County would also be nice too. What's the next county?
Union County.
Union County. Next time I come back, maybe. So, I have some good news and I have some bad news. What would you like first?
That's bad news.
The bad news is that this world where we're living right now is Dukkalayam Ashashvatam. It is a place of misery and it's a place of it is temporary. And we will never find happiness there. Now would you like to know the good news?
Yes.
The good news, you know what I'm going to say. That there's a place, once we go there, we never come back to this place, where it is all enjoyment. But it is enjoyment through love, through service. And that is the substance of our talk tonight. You know, when I was a young boy, I met my spiritual master for the first time, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. I thought, that's a long name. Why is his name so long? I'll never remember that. But he walked into the room and I was very excited to meet him because I'd been hearing about him for at least 5 months. And he gave a Bhagavad Gita class as he did in the evening. It was evening time. It was a winter evening, so it was dark like this. So then after the class, it came time for questions, and one lady put her hand up. She said, Srila Prabhupada, does Krishna ever speak Bhagavad Gita on the hellish planets? Because Krishna comes, we know, he comes to India, lucky India. Krishna doesn't come to Bergen County, but he comes to a nice place. And he speaks the Bhagavad Gita in the middle of Kurukshetra on a cold morning in Margashirsha, this time of year, just last week, 5,000 years ago. So then we know that, but does he preach Bhagavad Gita anywhere else? So she asked Prabhupada, does he speak in the hellish planets? Because as well as Swarga, there is also Naraka. One, sometimes people would like to go, the other one they don't like to go. So Prabhupada said, he said, this is a hellish planet. He said, every time I come to London, it is cold, it's raining, and it's dark. So this is a hellish planet. Now she was a disciple. I was not a disciple. So she said, like this. She was an English lady, but you know, when you're English, you learn this also. Anybody from South India? From South India? So can you show me how it's done? Bola Krishna Kanaya. Look at Jodis. So, but I wasn't a disciple, and I wanted to test. Here's a guru. They told me he's a guru. Let me see what sort of guru he is. Guru is supposed to make you happy. Chant and be happy, right? Take prasadam and be
Happy.
okay. Sing kirtan and be
Happy.
So if the guru of all this be happy, happy, happy is coming, I want to make sure that he's the proper guru. So of course I was 17, I knew everything there is to know about gurus. Everything, Baba. You cannot ask any question, I can tell you. So I was saying, if he's a proper guru, he will make me happy. If he's not a proper guru, he will make me sad. So he gave this answer to the young disciple, and I thought immediately, how can he be a proper guru? He's making her upset because he didn't answer her question. He's making me disappointed because I thought that he would answer my question. But he's sort of he's answering not the question, but he's making a statement. Well, I had to find out something about what is a guru. Because what is the real guru will always tell you the truth. will take your question and allow you to see some higher truth that you weren't thinking of before. So it's a technical thing. Does Krishna preach here or there? The most important thing that he wanted to tell this disciple is that this world is a place that you should get out of. This is the message of Krishna. So the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which I've been told you're studying at the moment, begins with 8 questions. And these questions are what the Bhakti Shastri students in the room tonight would say is Sambandha, Abhideya and Prayojana. The beginning, the middle and end of knowledge. So these questions are the questions that we ask about anything. Well, I would like to come to ISKCON of Bergen County. What's the zip code? When I get to the church, where do I go? How long will it last? How will I know when to stand up and sit down? Will I be embarrassed? I'm just a newcomer. What if they say Haribol? What do I say when they say Haribol? Well, I've heard they throw water all around when they're singing. And is it true they walk towards you with flames? What are you supposed to do? You go, Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you too. So I'm coming for the first time. I don't know anything. Don't know anything at all. And the food, what do they put in the food? Is it drugs? They tell me all the people at ISKCON of Bergen County, they're always dancing and singing and happy. That's because what's inside the food? Must be putting some drugs inside the food. So these are my questions. So the question is, zip code is like this. You go down the hill into the car park, you take this door, you turn left. It's in a basement, not upstairs, it's downstairs. You go to the back of the room, and then you can take part, and no, there's nothing in the door. So all these questions, everybody naturally has questions. Everybody's asking questions. Every single living creature is asking questions. Prabhupada said, when you wake up in the morning and you hear, he said, you know what the birds are saying? They're saying, where is food? Where is food? Where is food? These are basic questions. You've got to have food, you've got to have drink, you've got to have clothing, if you don't have feathers. Anybody have feathers? If you don't have feathers, you need clothing. And you need a place to be sheltered. Then you can start getting on with your other qualifications in life. So, Arjuna's questions, 7 of those questions, there's 8 questions, 7 of those questions have to do with what is the spirit, what is the soul, what is God, how does God live within us, what do we have to do, who do we have to worship, like that. But the final one is the one that Krishna picks up on. Krishna answers 7 of those questions like that. When he gets to the 8th question, Krishna says, okay, that's good. That's a really good question. Let's spend the next chapter on that. So we get the whole of the 8th chapter, which is called Attaining the Supreme, where Krishna is describing how to break free from this Dukkhalayama Shashvatam, this temporary world of disappointment, and how to achieve what some people call moksha, or some people call paramapadam, if you're from South India, paramapadam, or what we will call paramgati. So, this is the verse. Anybody know the verse, 8.15? Soon as I say the first 2 words, some of you bright sparks will say, oh, I know that one. So if you know that one, don't be afraid to speak it. First of all, let's put our hands together and do the, we'll do the invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Now, Srila Prabhupada traveled around the world, how many times? 14 times in 12 years. I just come on a trip from London to New York, and I'm feeling, well, that's it, I've done my austerities for the year. Just that short flight. Prabhupada was always flying. And he preached every day 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And he uses verses from Shastra. And he uses verses from the Vedanta Sutra, from the Ishopanishad, other Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. But this verse, chapter 8, verse 15, he uses 200 times. It is on the list of 100 top verses, it is number 63. So if you know this verse and you use it, you'll be doing pretty good. Okay? Mamupetya Punarjanma Dukalayam Ashashvatam Napnuvanti Mahatmana Samsiddhim Paramam Gata. So in this, the English translation is, he's talking about how, Krishna's talking about how people can come to him. How people can come to him. And he's not simply interested in Gujaratis coming to him at the end of their life. He says, Krishna says, even if you're from Tamil Nadu, you can come to me. Even if anybody from any part of the world can come to Krishna, because we are all Krishna's servants. That's right. So he says, after they come to me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion, bhakti yogis, they never come back to this temporary world because it's full of miseries. It's full of miseries because they have attained the highest perfection. So in this purport, Prabhupada says some very important things. How far is New York from here? 25 minutes?
30 minutes.
At the most, then, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
In 1966, Prabhupada began talking about this principle. He never stopped talking about this principle all his life. And the reason I'm saying that this is the bad news. The bad news is that this world is temporary and you'll never be happy here because it's temporary. It's full of problems and it's not your home. Well, that's, I paid a lot of money to come here tonight. I thought you were a Prabhupada disciple. I thought you were going to make me happy. That's the bad news. But how is it possible that by having bad news, we can be happy? Because if someone points out that something is false, that you can save money, you can save time, you can save your investment of time. Time is money. And ultimately you can be happy. So nobody likes to hear the end of the story, do they? Like, I know you don't go to the movies. I know nobody goes to the movies. I know you don't watch Bollywood videos. Nobody, right? Okay. I'm joking. But if you're going to watch a movie at a friend's house or something like that, and you see another friend coming back, and he says, oh, I've just seen that movie. You never guess what happens at the end. What happens at the end is he says, and then she is, and then he is, and it's not, no, she doesn't fall in love with him. Halfway through the movie, there's a dance sequence, but ultimately it's not. No, don't tell me. I don't want to know the end of the movie. So sometimes we find when people come, when the sadhus come and they want to tell us the end of the movie that we call life, we don't like to hear because the sadhu will say, birth is enough of a problem. Then comes, you know what comes after that? Old age, disease and death. No, don't tell me about that part. I want to be young forever. I want to be young forever. America is the country of plastic surgery, I all know. And my wrinkles taken away. Okay. So nobody likes that. Everybody wants to hear good news. But truth is always such that Prabhupada said, he said, India, he said it is like taking an Ayurvedic sweet. You know when you get an Ayurvedic sweet, and it tastes, you put it in your mouth. Do you like the taste of Ayurvedic medicine? Have you taken Ayurvedic medicine? Not very nice, huh? It's like neem and tamarind and everything, you know. But at the end they give you a little bit of sugar, right at the end of the sweet after you do. He said, Western civilization, he said the Western countries, they give you a sweet and it tastes like honey. And you think, but at the end there's poison. So this is Western civilization. Eastern civilization, we take that which is not pleasant first, and at the end we get something sweet. In the Western world we have something sweet, 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 and at the end it is poisonous. He said, so which do you want? Better to have the hard work first. You know, everybody wants to go onto the stage and to receive their qualification, doesn't it? I go to different people's homes, and on top of the piano or on top of the shelf, there's always the picture of the graduation day. You have a graduation? How many people graduated? So I don't want to insult you, or I didn't. But if you graduated, you want to have that hat, the mortarboard, and you want to have the qualification in your hand. And you take a picture, they take a picture, and you frame it, and you think that represents 3 years, 5 years, 7 years hard work. So imagine you wanted to have the pleasure of graduating, but you didn't want to do the hard work. It's impossible, isn't it? Thing is, the hard work must be done first, and then the enjoyment of graduation comes. So life itself is a learning opportunity, it's a learning university. But you know these things. I want to say something different. So, Prabhupada says, please listen, since this temporary world is full of the miseries of birth, death, old age, and disease, naturally he who achieves the highest perfection and attains the supreme planet, Krishna Loka, does not wish to return. That's the first thing he says. So, I want to say something here. Prabhupada, many, many times, he tells us how difficult it is to wake someone up when they are enjoying the illusion. What's the story of Indra? Huh?
And he had pig wives, and when Brahma came to get him, he said, no, I'm in there. Don't bother me, I'm with my pig wives, I'm very happy.
My pig wives and my little piglets. You ladies, if you've had children, can you imagine nursing a piglet? Not very nice, is it? But Indra was living as a pig. This story is there to show us that conditioning makes you forget your ultimate purpose. In the Upanishads, there's a very nice story. Again, it concerns pigs. But this story is where the king was out hunting, and he took his young 8-year-old son with him. He got lost, there was bandits, the king had to go home. They left the son in the forest, and the son was raised by the Adivasis who lived in the forest, and they were raising pigs. So the young prince he grew up to be a raiser of pigs in the forest. And he completely forgot who his father was. Maybe he wasn't 8, maybe he was a bit younger. He completely forgot where he came from, completely forgot who he was, until one day, one of the messengers of the king who had come out to search for the boy finally found him when he was 20. So all those years had gone by. And the boy said to the messenger, he said, "Who are you?" He said, "Look, I've come from your father." He said, "Oh, my father's in the village. Let me go and get him." He said, "No, that's not your father. Your real father is the king who lives in the palace. He loves you very much and he wants you to come home." He said, "My father's the king?" He said, "Yes. You are wealthy beyond your wildest dreams. But what about my pig-raising father and mother? I've lived in the village all this time raising pigs. What will I do? Come, we'll find something else for you to do." So it's like that. So the king who lives in the palace is Sri Krishna. The messenger is the guru or the sadhu. And he comes and he says, "This is not who you are. You are something more than this. Come with me, and I'll help you to rediscover your new life." So when you accept that invitation, you begin to experience the pleasure as you begin walking towards the palace. And this is the ecstasy of bhakti. That Krishna, the Supreme King, does not keep us waiting until we die before we experience that paramapada. But within bhakti itself, we begin to experience, through the grace of Srimati Radharani, we begin to experience the enjoyment of serving Krishna, even when we are firmly in this body. And this is the thing. And Krishna says, once you have experienced this, you will never want to come back to this world. Actually, Narad Muni, the great Mahatma, he says that forever the devotees of the Lord are known as Bhakti Rasagraha. Bhakti Rasagraha. Once they've experienced some enjoyment serving Krishna, they will never want to go anywhere else. Sometimes we do see, my friends, 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago now, I was in Scotland. You know Scotland? It's at the end of England as you go up north. And I met a man. I knew him. I've been in Krishna consciousness. I'm now 66. And I first discovered Krishna consciousness when I was 16. So it's 50 years, long time. I knew this young man. He left Krishna consciousness. 22 years later, he came back. I said, "How come I'm very delighted to see you, but how have you come back?" He said, "I just remembered how good it was. I just remembered my life before." I said, "But 22 years?" He said, "Prabhu, Maya is very strong. Maya is very strong." But he was back. And we were having the kirtan, and he was jumping around the room as if he was 15. He was 58. But he was jumping around the room with a big, big smile on his face. He was so happy to be back. So either this life or the next life, one will immediately develop an affection for Krishna and return. So in this word here, we have two words here. I want you to remember these two words. One is avyakta. Say it loudly, please. Avyakta. Now, from the introduction to Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says, avyakta means unmanifested. Unmanifested. Unmanifested doesn't mean that it's not there. It just means that you can't see it. Prabhupada said, the spiritual world is real, but it's avyakta. You cannot see it. And there's trees all around us. You don't see the roots of the tree, but that doesn't mean that the roots aren't there. They're just not manifest to you. Let me tell you a story. In my country, there's a place called Sheffield. It's famous for making stainless steel, a bit like Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh and the Steelers. We also have some kind of music as well. But there was a young man who was at university, this story will go out and then it will come back. And he had some problem. He went to the university doctor. The doctor said, I'm going to send you to someone else to get checked. This is 20 years ago, back in 2000. Hello. And this boy was mathematics, a bit of a genius. Anybody like mathematics here? What does that mean? Kabhi khushi, kabhi gum. Sometimes you like it, sometimes you don't. So this boy had an IQ of 126. It was pretty good, huh? In India they would go, wow, wow, wow. So IQ of 126. So he went to this doctor whose name was, it's a true story, Dr. Loba. And Dr. Loba put him through a CAT scan. You know a CAT scan? Yeah. To scan the brain, see if there was any. And Dr. Loba was so astounded. He was so astounded. He called the technician. He said, there's something wrong with the machine. This young man has no brain. And he looked, and where we would normally see a brain, there was a big empty space. He had no brain. In fact, his brain was just a quarter of an inch of tissue on the inside of the skull. He said, where's the brain? There's no brain. He's got an IQ of 126. He teaches mathematics, studies mathematics. Got a very true story. This young man had something called hydrocephalus. But with the brain that he had, which was no brain, he was able to have an IQ of 126. It was unmanifest. The brain was just not manifest. But the intelligence was there. Therefore we say intelligence is separate from the brain. Brain is something that the intelligence uses, but intelligence can exist separately. Anyway, in the South Pacific, there was a tribe back in the 1940s, and they'd never seen an airplane before. And the airplane landed on the beach on the sand. And they thought the airplane was a big bird. So they came forward with bunches of bananas to feed the big bird that had just landed on their beach with some godlike white people who came out onto the beach. So for them, they did not see the engine. The engine was avyakta. They could not see the engine. But the engine was actually there. So my point to you is that something, you may not see it, but it is actually there. So Krishna says the spiritual world is there, but you can't see it. Prabhuji said, I spent 2 years in Africa. When I was in Africa, I saw something that previously to me was avyakta or unmanifest. Do you know what a chameleon is? They change color. So he was green, he was sitting in the hedge. And I thought, I wonder if it's true. I've never seen one before. So he was bright green, like this. And I took a yellow flower, and I put the yellow flower up against him, and he started to change color where the flower was touching his skin. I stayed there for 15 minutes. I watched the color yellow go all over his body. The creature that was previously green was now yellow. And a little voice inside me said, you haven't seen anything. You haven't seen anything. You young English person. You haven't been anywhere. You haven't seen very much. And yet, you're trying to discover with your tiny brain whether the spiritual world actually exists. You don't even know what a chameleon is. And it's just a little bit of my magic. Wait till you see the spiritual. And at that moment, I'd been a devotee for maybe 4 years, 5 years, something like that. I really started to believe in that which I could not see. It made sense. So my faith was very much increased. One of my god brothers, his name was Narahari. He came to Prabhupada at Bhaktivedanta Man and he said, Srila Prabhupada, that was his voice, he said, are we supposed to understand that Mahavishnu breathes out thousands and thousands of universes. How are we supposed to understand that? Prabhupada just looked at him and smiled and he said, you will never understand with your puppy brain. Anyway, he was complimenting. But the point is, just because you cannot see it, does not mean it is not there. One time, we had a young man staying with us, again at Bhagavad. All my stories come from Bhagavad. There was a young boy who played the flute. And he was also an artist. He was painting a picture of Prabhupada. But Prabhupada went for a walk around the lake. We have a lake. And this boy was sitting in a tree. And he was very nicely playing the flute. And the sound of the flute was going over the grass, through the trees. And Prabhupada was just listening. Prabhupada said, what is that? And he started to describe the spiritual world. He started to describe Krishna in the spiritual world. And the devotees were just listening with rapt attention because it seemed to them as if Prabhupada could see something that they could not see because he was describing it as real. In America, one journalist came to Prabhupada and said, so how do you know that what you're saying is true? He said, Krishna tells me. Krishna tells me. And then another devotee he said, no, what he means is he gets inspiration from the heart and, he gets some inspiration. And Prabhupada looked at him and he said, no. He said, I see Krishna directly, face to face. On another occasion, they came to him and they said, Prabhupada, how is it that you're so able to argue with big scientists who have so much information that there is not such a thing as the spiritual world, and they are all believing in a pipe dream? How is it that you're so convinced when you speak to them? He said, because he's arguing with me that there is no Krishna. Behind his shoulder, I'm seeing Krishna smiling. He said, it is like a blind man coming to me, trying to persuade me that there's no sun in the sky. When I look up in the sky, I can see the sun. The blind man has never seen the sun. And he's trying to tell me that there's no such thing as the sun. You see? So Prabhupada comes and he comes to us in darkness. The next, are we okay? Okay. So the next word I want you to say out loud is akshara. And akshara, this means, the word means that which has no demolition, no annihilation, no end, something which is eternal. It does not annihilate, akshara. So, 25 minutes away is, hopefully, if I'm pointing in that direction, is 26 2nd Avenue, somewhere that way. Where's New York? That way will do. So Prabhupada says on November the 19th, 1966, he says, this verse we have been discussing last day, that avyakta akshara. Avyakta means which is not manifested. Akshara means which has no annihilation. In the material world, everything is born, it stays for some time, it develops, gives some byproducts, then it dwindles and vanishes. These 6 forms of changes is called Shadvikara. Say it.
Shadvikara.
Shadvikara, the 6 transformations. But the spiritual world, avyakta, which is not manifested at the moment, is akshara. It is not changing. My god brother Bhagavad Shraya was in Vrindavan, and Prabhupada at that time was having some difficulty in movement. And when you're in Prabhupada's vicinity, sometimes you're serious and sometimes you are relating to your god brothers, even though Prabhupada is there. So he said something and somebody laughed, and Prabhupada heard them. And Prabhupada at that time, who was 80, must have been 81 at that time, he said, do not think this will not happen to you. don't think this won't happen to you. Meaning, don't think that you won't get old. And it's a difficult thing getting older. Now I've personal experience. I was 17 when I first met the devotees. Immediately they started talking to me about the spiritual world, which is avyakta and akshara. And you can go there, and this material body is temporary, and it goes through the transformations. And immediately I was 17 and a half, and I had my finger like this, and I was telling everybody, people old, much older than me, everybody was older than me at that time. I was telling everybody about life, death, birth, old age, disease, reincarnation. I knew everything. I didn't know anything. Now I know something. I know something about the problems of getting old. Problems of getting old. It takes you by surprise. But something happened to me. I think I may have told this story last time. When I was 20, Prabhupada gave a talk in the temple room. And he said, as Prabhupada did, he was looking around the temple room, he was looking at everybody's face. He was looking at everybody's faces. And he wanted to make a statement. He said, so many lives you've had in the past. You will have so many lives in the future. He said, if you like, you can have more lives after this one. You've had so many in the past. If you want more, you can have them. They will come whether you like it or not. But he said, just give this one life. Each life is very short. So just give this one life to Krishna. And as he said, give this one life to Krishna, I thought he was looking at me. Give this one short life to Krishna. He was looking at me, I can claim that. Give this one short life to Krishna. And I thought, okay, I will do that. Because it's short anyway. Difficulty is, my friends, that when you're living life, it seems like a very long time. It seems like a very long time. There's adequate opportunity to forget Krishna during this one short life, believe me. Anyway, give this one short life to Krishna. What do we hear from the 11th canto? 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Anybody read the 11th canto? Okay. If you're from Madhya Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh? Madhya Pradesh? Not Madhya Pradesh. Is it Madhya Pradesh? The Marwaris are from Madhya Pradesh. Okay. Then the 11th canto is practically the Bible. Practically the Bible. What time do we finish, by the way?
6:30.
6:30. Okay. So then, the 11th canto, everything is contained there because Krishna continues speaking what he didn't say in a much detailed way in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna speaks in a different way. So this verse from the 11th canto says, an intelligent person, that's all of you, should see that any material activity, anything that you do, is subject to continuous change, and thus inauspiciousness exists all over the material world, even on Brahmaloka. A wise man understands that just as all that he has seen is temporary, all things within the universe have a beginning and an end. This is a very difficult thing to, as I will be a little serious now. I tell a lot of stories and I tell humorous stories, but this is the thing. Everything is changing. Everything is in a state of flux. You know, ants, what's the American word for ant? What's the American word for ant? Ant, right? You use the same language, right? English. Okay. I go to different places. I say, what's your word for? I go to Hungary or Romania or Spain or France. What's your word for? Because we speak the same language. So an ant thinks that it lives a very long life. Every creature thinks that they live for 100 years. But when you're higher than that creature, you can see that they don't live very long at all. They really don't live very long at all. We don't see very much of the situation as it is because we're locked in tight with our senses of perception. Did you know that an American eagle flying in the sky can see a rabbit running on the ground at a height of 1 mile? That's the equivalent of you being on the 6th floor of a building and seeing an ant walking along the ground. It's amazing. The eyesight is amazing. Did you know that a male fish can smell a female fish? Female fish. What's your American word for mish? Fish. Can smell a female fish 1 mile away. 1 mile away. And a bat can navigate. I mean, every living creature, they can see better than us. They see the world in a different way. We only see the electromagnetic spectrum within the what we call visible light. Off one end there's ultraviolet, and we can't see that, some creatures can. Off the other end there's infrared, we can't even see that, other creatures can. So we're locked tight, not only in the material world, but in a very thin wave band of perception. We're stuck. We are really, really stuck. If you knew how stuck you were, you'd be more serious about Krishna consciousness, wouldn't you? Be more serious about getting out. There's an old Buddhist story. The master takes his disciple to the river to have a midday bath. And as the disciple is having his bath, the master takes his head and pushes it under the water. So the boy begins to drown. And then he pulls it out. He says, "What were you thinking of?" He says, "I was drowning." "What were you thinking of?" He said, "Breathe, I must breathe." He said, "Well, that is the strength that your desire to escape this world must be as strong as that. It must be the only thing that you think of." And here Krishna says the words Paramgati. Paramgati means your highest goal. Your highest goal. In order to get out, it must be your highest goal. But we spend a lot of time talking about things that are very changeable. If you were to go to the local, what's it called? ShopRite. You go to the local ShopRite, okay? And you were to stand by the checkout. They say checkout counter? You say checkout counter. Okay. And you were to watch someone checking out the goods, you know. Okay, carrots, potatoes, milk, breakfast cereal, snacky things, okay. Another person comes, okay, butter, cheese, you know, breakfast cereal. And you were to stand there just looking and making notes. And then you were to get excited about what people are putting in the baskets, and you started, well, you know, I was standing here and there's carrots and there's apples, and I can see that people would think that you were mad. They'd think that you were mad. It's just a conveyor belt of different groceries. It's not of interest. And in the same way, this whole world, what presents itself before our senses, is just a conveyor belt of things. Conveyor belt of stuff. Sometimes it's visual things. Black spectacles case. Microwave oven. Cuddly toy. New car. Wife. House. It's just a conveyor belt. Just a conveyor belt. Don't get too excited about it. That's what the sadhus are telling us. Because you know what? Everything disintegrates. This is good science. If you want to be a good sadhu or sattvi, you want to have good science. Good science is that everything is in a state of flux, and as soon as something is produced, it's in a state of decomposition. And if big business has anything to do with it, there's planned obsolescence worked into every product, so that the consumer cycle will renew itself. Everything wears out. Your insurance wears out. Your teeth wear out. Okay. Your colonoscopy only lasts for so long. Your saris wear out. Your dhotis wear out. Your socks wear out. Your shoes wear out. Then your ears begin wearing out. Your eyes begin wearing out. Your nose begins wearing out. Your digestion begins with everything. If you could see a speeded up movie, if you could see it, you'd see everything. You ever seen one of those speeded up movies with things like they grow and then they just decompose like that? When I was a young boy, about 12, my mother bought me a birthday present. It was a book of short stories by a science fiction writer called H.G. Wells. And he wrote something called The Time Machine. And it was a man that went into his living room and he got into a machine that he made himself, and he pulled the handle and he saw the world in a state of flux. He was zooming through time and he saw trees go and collapse. Then he saw buildings come up, somebody built them and then they collapsed. He saw all things. Then he saw even mountains themselves were coming, and he went faster and faster. And eventually he saw the whole of the world as an ocean. The whole of the world was like an ocean, in a permanent state of flux, just moving like this, moving like this, moving like this. So the sadhus come and they say, Prabhupada tells us the story of the yogi who was sitting by the ocean, and his disciples were very concerned because he was sitting and meditating, and the sun was beating down on his shaven head. He said, Maharaj, can we build you a cottage? And this particular yogi, he was given the benediction that he would live 1,000 years for as many hairs as he had on his body, something like that. So he was going to live a very, 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 very long time. I said, should we build you a... He said, no, it's all temporary. It's all temporary. And, the thing is, when people have lived life, the next thing is to live the spiritual life. This is how you graduate. I do a lot of weddings. I'm a priest at different weddings. And one gentleman was in what we call a salwar kameez. Salwar kameez, a long kurta. But he was a European man. He was about 70. And I got talking to him, and I said, sir, you seem very interested in the proceedings. He said, yes, I'm interested in spirituality and different things like that. My friends are getting married today. I said, what have you seem to have lived a long life. You seem a wise person. I said, what have you done? He said, I've been a scientist. I said, what did you do? He said, I've been an inventor. I said, oh, would I know anything that you invented? He said, yes, I invented something called the touch screen. I said, the touch screen? You invented the touch screen? He said, yes, then I sold it to a company called Apple. I said, then what did you do? Oh, he said, now I do yoga. I live in the south of France where there's lots of sunshine, and I make juices. I said, that's what you do? He said, yeah, what else is there to do? I've done everything else. So he'd invented, he made his money. Well, what do you do after you make your money? Then you do the real stuff, right? The spiritual life. I was so inspired to hear his story because it just seemed to me that, he was because you see, sometimes, after having become a disciple of Srila Prabhupada at such a young age, I think, what could I have done? What would my life have been like? I could have got some qualifications, I could have got some education, I could have had, I could have had a better house, I could have done this, I could have done that. And sometimes Krishna sends you somebody to just tell you a little story like that. Anything? Okay, that's all right. Stay on the path. Stay on the path. Is that okay? Yeah. All right. So just finally, we find that when people become enlivened to take up spiritual life, they're not even interested in the heavenly planets, going to a higher destination. They want God. And this is the preserve of, in the West it's a preserve of, very special people they call saints. But you will notice the difference in the way we use the word saint in our tradition. When we say someone is a saint, we say that he's a living person who is a saintly person, a devotee, a Mahatma. In the Catholic Church, in the Christian Church, the first qualification of being a saint is that you die. That's the first qualification. You cannot be a living saint, you have to be a dead saint. And then if someone prays to you and you do 2 miracles, and it must be 2, then you can be a saint. But in our tradition, we have to live before we die, in a sense. We have to be saintly. So don't wait until you die to become a saint. Become a Mahatma now. So we don't even want the 5 types of spiritual liberation. We don't want Samipya, Sarshti, Salokya, Sarupya. And we're definitely not interested in Sayujya or Ekatvam, merging with the Lord. We don't accept those. We just want to be like Prahlad Maharaj. And when Prahlad Maharaj was given some material benefits, he said, I want what only you can give me. I just want bhakti. So they want Krishna's association and nothing else. That is the highest perfection of life. Prabhupada says, I will finish in 2 minutes. This verse, he says, specifically mentions the devotees of the Lord. These devotees achieve the highest perfection of life. So there's a relationship between here, Paramgatim, highest goal, and something called Sharanagatim. Sharanagatim is how you get Paramagatim. You like that? Sharanagatim to get Paramagatim. So Sharanagatim has 6 elements. Who knows what they are? 6 elements of
accepting things favorable, rejecting things that are not.
That's right, accepting things which are favorable for the service of Krishna. Anukul. Anu means following. Go in the direction of the servants of the Lord. We had my friend, he was invited to Buckingham Palace. You know Buckingham Palace, where the Queen, the late Queen, lives with her husband, Duke of Edinburgh. He was invited there to have lunch with Her Majesty the Queen. Out of the kitchen came a dish full of food that he could not eat. He was a lifelong vegetarian. So the husband of the Queen, the Duke, said, "What's the matter?" His name was Ramesh. He said, "What's the matter, Ramesh?" He said, "Well, I'm a vegetarian." He said, "Oh, we got the kitchen to get you something else." They came back with fish. Because as everybody knows, fish is a vegetable. You didn't know these things? In England, fish is a vegetable. You didn't know that? I went to a military training camp. It's called Sandhurst, where they train all the British Army officers. I went dressed like this. They said, "Our head cooks have been busy in the morning. We've prepared everything according to your religious requirements." It was a convention. I said, "Oh, thank you so much. It's so nice that someone takes care of me." I came over and said, "This is the tuna." I said, "But tuna is, go, work with me. Tuna is fish, right?" They said, "Yeah." "And fish is a vegetable or an animal?" And you could see the penny, as we say, the penny drops. Goes, "Oh, so you can't eat it?" And I said, "I'm so sorry." Anyway, my friend said, eventually they brought him some salad and he was eating it. He said, and then the head of the kitchen came to him and he said, "Look, we can make this work for you. We're so sorry. Can you say to us what we can do for you?" He said, yes, I want you to come to a place and we will serve you. So 17 people came from Buckingham Palace to Bhaktivedanta Manor. We sat them down. They were servants, but we served them. And we gave them a little talk, and they said, actually, your life and our life is very similar. When we wake up in the morning, we just think of the pleasure of one family, the royal family. And when you wake up in the morning, you think of the pleasure of one family, your divine family. So there's not much difference between us. I said, yes, the principle is service. Principle is service. So this is life as a devotee. Anukul. And anything which is against service, don't do that. So you can spend your whole life trying to do anukul and pratikul. There's two more. One is to say that Krishna, you are my protector, and to believe that Krishna, anything I need, you will maintain me. Anything I need will come from you. And sometimes, that comes as if we say, as if by magic. It really does. So many stories I've heard personally, devotees by magic about just what they needed at just the right time. But you must place yourself in service to Krishna. And finally, to consign yourself, like if you were going to the bank, making a deposit. So you take your soul and you say, my dear Lord, I'm now putting this in the bank of Krishna. I want to deposit my soul for safekeeping in your bank. Please take care of it. I know you will. Then when anything comes, always see yourself as helpless. You can be materially very, very powerful, but inside you should think, before God, I'm helpless. And the interesting thing is that as you think you're helpless before God, within the world, you can become a very powerful person. This is a strange paradox of being a servant of God. Prabhupada one time he said, sometimes he said, I see a very small dog, and he sees a big dog on the street, and he is, how is a little dog barking at a very big dog? He said, because he knows that he is connected by a rope to his master, and his master is bigger than that dog. So in the same way, when you know that you're connected to Krishna, you can do the most amazing things. You can do the most amazing things. And Krishna will never let his devotees become disappointed. Hare Krishna. So we have learned Avyakta, Akshara, and Paramgatim, and Sharanagati. Thank you. Do you have time for one question?
No, we can ask questions.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for... Now I
Any
can share
questions or
it.
comment? Anyone?
I have a comment to the question. My comment is that in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Sanatana Goswami and Gopal Kumar, they say not only is the spiritual world not manifest to the material world, it can't really be described in words what it's like, because it's so much beyond our material conception.
Yeah.
My question is this: Krishna says, once you come to me, you don't come back to this world, this Dukkhalayam Shashvatam place. But we know that sometimes devotees who are perfect, when Krishna comes, they also come. So, do they then have to suffer in this world again when they accompany Krishna in all the times that Krishna appears?
Yeah, the first part of your question was we can't understand the spiritual world. One time, Prabhupada was trying to get over to his audience in New York, who were all young people who had been experimenting with drugs. And he looked out at 50 or 60 of them in 22nd Avenue. And he said, what is the spiritual world? And what is Krishna consciousness? And he said, he paused for a moment, he said, it is like an ocean of LSD. Which was an example he thought that they would. Yeah, do devotees come from with Krishna? Yes, every eventuality is is possible. Every eventuality is possible. Do they suffer again? I tend to think that devotees don't suffer either because Krishna protects them, that's one thing, so they don't physically suffer. Or if there is some suffering to the material body, they rise above it because they understand that. Just like if you have a nice top there, right? What do you call it? A hoodie?
Yeah.
Hoodie. If somehow you got hot and this hoodie was taken up and somehow or another it dropped, you put it on the fire extinguisher back there, that red fire extinguisher, and it fell off, and someone opened the kitchen door and then slammed the kitchen door on your hoodie, you wouldn't feel any pain. Because well, it's dirty, but it wasn't painful. No one would come to you and go, "Are you okay?" Because your hoodie's over there and you're sitting here. So in the same way, the pure devotee of the Lord perceives this body to be clothing. Not just philosophically, intellectually, as we read about it in the Vasamsi Jirnani Yatavahaya, but actually experiences it. Prabhupada said it is like two friends. Did Prabhupada say this? Don't pin me down on where Prabhupada said it. But this is not a Prabhupada said, this is a maybe Prabhupada said. I'm the king of maybe, Prabhupada said. And so two friends were going to work every morning together, same time. They would walk to work. And one friend, he'd saved up enough money to get a car. So he said, well, instead of walking to work, shall I pick you up in my new car? And the friend said, oh yes, please, that would be very nice to see your new car. So the one friend was driving, the other friend was sitting, and he was enjoying. Because it was cold, they didn't have to walk to work anymore. And there was an accident. Car got hit by another car. And then the one friend whose car was, he jumped out and he said, oh, you hit me, you hit me, you hit me. And he was in such anxiety. New car got hit. And then the friend who was the passenger, he didn't feel anything at all. He had no emotional connection to the vehicle. And he just looked at his watch and he said, I'm sorry, I've got to leave you, I've got to go to work. So our attachment to the body results in pain, results in loss, results in disappointment, results in anticipation of pleasure which may come. It's and the sadhu comes and says, don't be attached. Now, this is a philosophical class that we're giving, so we don't mean to say that you should all go home tonight, all you husbands should go home to your wives and say, you know what? Prabhuji said in the class, don't be attached. So I've realized I am attached to my wife and I'm leaving. Okay? Ladies, don't feel insecure. Because Krishna also says, for the purposes of leading a good life, you work as if you're attached, but within this body, you develop the gradual perception that you are the spirit soul. You may know these things. But we have to be careful if you take one talk out of context. Anything else? One more?
Anybody have?
Something simple. Then I won't keep you long. Prabhuji. This just looks as if it's going to be a hard question.
No,
I can tell he's limbering up for one of those stump the speaker questions.
No, Prabhu. Just a simple clarification. Why we are not interested in mukti or sayujya mukti especially?
Why we're not interested? You mean why we should not be interested?
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing. We should be interested in the principle of liberation in the beginning. We should be very much interested in And in fact, Prabhupada used to motivate his disciples by saying things like, we should want to get out of the material world, we should want to never come back here, we should want to break free, we're in prison, we should. So in some way he was trying to, because his Guru Maharaj has said that he was very happy when his disciples came up to the mode of passion. The great disappointment for the Guru is when the disciples have no interest even of getting free from the material conditioning. You see, if you don't have any appetite for breaking free from material conditioning, it will be very difficult to develop love for Krishna, because it will be material, and it will end up as religion, ordinary religion, or will end up as what we call sahaja, cheap. I love Krishna, but I love the material world. That doesn't work. So in the beginning, that must be that motivation. But it cannot be that we reach the point where we think that I'm interested in just the absence of pain. Material life ultimately gives disappointment, frustration, and ultimately suffering. Is dukhalayam shashvatam. So therefore, when we want the pain to stop, we want to be free. I don't know how it is here, but in most of the world, people are getting very frustrated with relationships. Very difficult relationships people have. Sometimes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Best to have one partner, be married. Khatam ho gaya. That's it. All the men should take ek patni brat, and all the ladies similar. So, but a lot of people don't, because they're looking for perfection. Everybody's looking for Krishna, but they want the beauty of Shri Krishna through the beauty of people in this world, and you'll never quite find what you're looking for with an ordinary partner. It doesn't happen. And so they become frustrated, they move on to the next, like that. Puna. So people then think, well, relationships cause suffering, therefore I won't have any relationships. One of my friends, he came to Krishna consciousness. I said, what have you been doing? He was 28. I said, what have you been doing up until now? He said, well, I became very frustrated. I became a Buddhist because I was suffering so much. I wanted to get free of Maya. I said, then what did you do? He said, I went to become a lighthouse keeper. You know a lighthouse keeper? A lighthouse, just a tower with a light and just you. 365 days a year, there's just you. I said, what did you do in the lighthouse? He said, I meditated. It's good. The money was coming in by being a lighthouse keeper. He was so lonely. And then he met the devotees. I was walking in Andhra Pradesh. Anybody know Andhra? Andhra Pradesh, beautiful part of the world. Are you from Andhra? Any Telugu speakers? Very nice. Beautiful part of the world. So Andhra Pradesh, I've been to Visakhapatnam and Vizianagaram and all these places. And anyway, we were walking for a week in Andhra Pradesh, and now we had 200 of us. We were walking, and I made friends with a man who was 77, and he'd been a yogi for 20 years. And his hair, he had not cut his hair, so his hair had grown down to his ankles. Proper yogi. But he'd been meditating for 15 years, 20 years in a cave. Then he came out to buy some vegetables, just to get some vegetables in the market. And when he was in the market, someone sold him a copy of a magazine. It was called Back to Godhead. And he looked at that magazine, and after 15 years meditating just by himself, in a cave. He said, I've got to give this a try. So I met him when he was 70, 77, 78, and heard his story, wonderful story. He'd grown up amongst cannibals in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, which belong to India, but there are cannibals there. So his neighbors did not eat vegetables. I won't tell you what they ate, but I'll just tell you, don't go there. So he became a yogi, and it was very easy to see that this idea of just extinguishing the self, getting away from all possible troubles by extinguishing the sense of identity, that was also too painful. So this is an antidote. But coming to Krishna consciousness gives us a full understanding of who we are, and it's a wonderful thing. And this ISKCON of Bergen County is giving us a wonderful opportunity. So I'm so happy to see you all here, and it is very joyful for me to see that you come every week, and you are so enthusiastic, and you have a beautiful temple. You didn't even have to build it. You wanted one, Krishna said, okay. You devotees of Jesus, give them some space. So, Jesus Christ, ki jai. Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Abhijit.
Thank you so much.